Hey everybody, hopefully I can get this video done without being interrupted. I'm at work right now. So I want to tell you guys something. Um, there's so much going on. Tensions with Iran are really increasing. Like something's gonna happen real soon. Iran is refusing to back down. And obviously we sent the USS Abraham Lincoln to the Middle East with missiles and stuff like that. So we are gearing up, and it could just be, show of force, trying to scare them, but they don't seem like they're willing to back down. So something is definitely going to happen there. And then of course you got the rising tensions in Venezuela going on with Maduro and Guaido, however you say his name. And then North Korea starting to test missiles again. And then you have China's tensions with the U.S. Over the trade agreement. And then, of course, what's going on in Israel with the Gaza. So, I mean, things are just heating up all over. And the U.S. seems to be in the middle of a lot of it. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, but my main reason for making this video is to talk about two dreams I had. Now, I've never had a dream where I can definitively say that was from God. And I'm not saying these dreams are from God because I haven't really figured it out yet. I've been praying about it, but they are interesting, and I just want to tell you about them and how I understand them. So the first dream happened like 2 nights ago, and it took place in a classroom. It was just me and 3 other students. My husband was one student, my stepson's mother was the other student, and the third student I don't recognize. I don't know who he was. And then there was a male teacher who I've seen before, but not sure who he was either. And in the classroom, we were taking a test, and it was like a big test, like a big booklet full of multiple choice questions. And while we were taking the test, I also had my Bible on my desk, and I was reading my Bible continuously and then going back and like answering questions and going back to reading my Bible. And my stepson's mom made a comment about kind of making fun of me for reading my Bible. Not saying that's how she is in person, that's just how she is in my dream. And I made this little rude remark, which I don't agree with, but then then that was over with, and then I just kept reading my Bible and going back to my questions. And then I remember the teacher reading from the booklet of questions something that said, man wrote the Bible. And I remember getting mad, and I spoke up and I interrupted the teacher, and I said, actually no, scripture says it's all God breathed, that God wrote the Bible. And at first he was agreeing with me. He goes, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then he got angrier and angrier, and then he threatened to fail me or threatened to make me sit there all day until I finished my test, and told me to stop reading my Bible and to just keep taking my test. And so his demeanor towards me completely changed, and he was just angry, over the top angry at me. But I didn't listen. I just kept reading my Bible, going back to my test, reading my Bible, going back to my test. And then as time went on, I realized, like, I started to feel a sense of urgency, like, oh, I gotta finish my test or I'm gonna fail. And then I remember feeling I was guessing, like I wasn't even reading the questions. I was just going through and guessing and circling whatever answer because I felt like I was too stupid and I wasn't gonna get it right anyways, so I was just gonna wing it and just gonna pick whatever I wanted. And then right before we were supposed to turn in our test, I felt like I needed to read it. And so I went back and I read the questions, and I realized they were a lot easier than I thought, and I knew the answers. So I changed my answers. And then basically the dream was over. It may sound kind of pointless, like, okay, it's just a test and whatever, but the way it kind of like, I woke up at 2:30 because my son, in real life, I'm not dreaming anymore, my son knocked on our door because he had a scary dream and he wanted to come sleep with us. So I woke up, and I remember feeling like I had to write this down, and I've never felt that way before. And again, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I'm going to tell you how I interpret it. So at 2:30, I wrote in my notes on my phone about my dream that I had. And this is how I kind of interpret it, is the teacher is the world, represents the world. This is how I see it. So if you think of something else, feel free to tell me. But the teacher represents the world. The Bible is the Bible and my relationship with God. The test I was taking, I think, is my life, or how I've been living my life, or how I want to live my life. And so what stands out the most to me is I kept reading my Bible and going back to my test throughout the whole dream. It was back and forth, reading my Bible, going back to my test. And that stands out to me as I have, throughout my whole life, struggled with balancing my relationship with God in my life. So up until very recently, my life and what was going on in my life and the worldly aspect of it was, I held it to be more important than God, than my relationship with God. I believed in Him, but I never read the Bible. I didn't really pray very often. I went to church as a kid, but when I became an adult, I stopped going to church. And so to me, that kind of represents how I struggled for a long time to balance it. And obviously, when I say balance, I mean God needs to be number one priority in your life. And I do that now. And so another thing that stands out to me is when the teacher was reading something in the test that said, man made the Bible. To me, that sounds like a false doctrine. It sounds like deception, false teaching. You have a lot of that going on right now. And like I said, the teacher, in my opinion, represents the world. And the world is teaching all this false stuff, false doctrines in the church, outside the church, all these false teachings. And the teacher liked me at first, or was, just neutral, didn't have a problem with me. Okay, but once I corrected the teacher and said, "Oh, that's wrong. God wrote the Bible. It's God breathed." Then the teacher's demeanor and attitude towards me completely changed. And to me, that represents how I used to be of the world and worldly, and now I'm not of the world anymore. And certain people and certain relationships I have changed since I started walking with Jesus. And the world says in the Bible, since I chose you out of the world will hate you. So that was really what I felt from this teacher after I corrected him, was a lot of hate, a lot of anger. He was just super mad at me, wanted to fail me, wanted to, punish me. And then the last part of my dream, at first I was just carelessly circling whatever answers on this test because I felt like I could not get the right answers, and so I was just guessing and circling whatever. And to me, that speaks about my life before I started walking with Jesus. I just kind of carelessly went about my life. I made bad choices. I circled the wrong answers. I made bad choices. I kept doing the wrong thing. I kept failing. And then at the end of this test, I started to feel a sense of urgency, like I need to hurry up, it's going to be due soon, that I've got to turn in my test. And then I felt like I need to just go back and actually read this. And then when I read it, instead of guessing, I realized I knew these answers. It was a lot simpler, easier than I thought. To me, that speaks of my life where I'm at right now. I am walking with Jesus and realizing that living his way, which I never thought I'd be able to do, it always sounded too hard for me, or not fun, or boring, or not popular, whatever. Realizing now his way is the best way. I feel the best I've felt in my entire life. You know, I have down moments, of course, like everyone, but I genuinely have an overall sense of peace and happiness because I'm walking with Jesus and doing and living my life the way he wants me to. And the sense of urgency I felt in my test towards the end is kind of what's going on right now. In a sense of urgency, I feel like we're so close to being done with our test, done with our life here, and going to be with God and Jesus. So, you know, this is my interpretation of my dream. I've never felt like I needed to write anything down before. I felt like I woke up and I had to write it down or I was going to forget it. And the way it kind of played out, it just these things just stand out to me. I've prayed about it, you know, but I do kind of think it was a reflection on me and how I've grown in God. The second dream I had was actually last night, and it was about the rapture, but I don't know if it was from God necessarily, because some of the details were kind of weird and there were some just random things, you know, jumbled in. And I think about the rapture all the time, so it could be a subconscious thing also, but it's kind of a bizarre dream. I'll just briefly tell you it. I don't put a whole lot of stock into it because I don't really know what this dream, what it was about. But so for some reason, Kylie Jenner was in my dream. I don't watch the Kardashians. I don't have anything to do with that. So I have no idea why she was in my dream. But I was actually invited to be in a fashion show with her and a couple of her other friends. Again, I have no idea why she would be in my dream. I don't watch the Kardashians. I don't have anything to do with that, so because I don't agree with their lifestyle. But for some reason, she was in my dream. And so we're all getting ready at her house, getting ready to be in this fashion show. And of course, her house is huge and fancy, and we're in a limo. And my grandma, now I've mentioned my grandma in past videos, that my grandma, I've been really, really trying to save her. Well, not me save her, but planting seeds. And I've seen God reach out to her in several different ways, and she's just not getting it. So if you could keep her in your prayers, I'd really appreciate that. But anyway, she was in my dream, and she was almost like watching over us girls as we're getting ready. And she was getting ready too. And she was, you know, my grandma's always been kind of fancy. She grew up in Sweden in the 1940s, and she was from a wealthy family. So she's always just had this really elegant, fancy style about her. So she was all fancy. And we were running late to this fashion show, like super late. Like the show had already started, and we were all like panicking, like we're gonna miss it, and the show's gonna go on and we're not gonna be there. And so we all pile into the limo, and while we're in the limo on our way to the show, a bright light just takes over, and I can't see any of the other girls in the limo. It's just me and this tremendously bright light. And I remember thinking in my mind, it's the rapture. It's time. It's really happening. And then I was taken out of the limo and taken up to heaven. Now, I don't remember anything about heaven. I just remember looking and seeing what was going on after I had been removed. And it was just chaos. And I saw my grandma there, which I was really upset about. And so, and that's basically it. So it's totally random with Kylie Jenner. I don't understand that part at all. Maybe she represents the world. I don't know. I don't know what that has to do about it. But it was interesting to say the least. So there you have it. Those are my two dreams. Like I said, I'm not saying they mean anything significant. I just think it's interesting, and I just wanted to share it with you. And if you have a different interpretation for my first dream or even for the last one, feel free to comment below. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I'm making this video kind of long, but oh well. In these final moments, we can see a lot of tension rising all over the world. And I've experienced temptation in areas that I thought I had closed the chapter on. I've been experiencing a lot of emotional attacks. For those of you who don't know, although I think I mentioned it before, I lost my mom in August, and God has really given me peace with that, but this past week has been really hard. It's probably because Mother's Day is coming up. It's the first Mother's Day without her. But I've been extremely emotional, kind of depressed, irritable, just not feeling like my normal self this week. And I know I've been hearing from other people the devil is just really attacking full force right now because he knows his days are numbered and we're getting close. We're getting so close. I just want to let you know that to just keep hanging on. I feel better today. I feel a lot better today. I've been reading my Bible a lot and just feeling a lot better. But just keep trusting in God, keep praying, keep reading the Word, and just, I'm in 1 Peter right now, and here, 1 Peter 2, 20, towards the end of it, says, "But when you do good and suffer, if you take it patiently, this is commendable before God. For this to you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps." So it's talked about many times in the Bible, not just that spot, but how our lives as believers and Christians are not going to be easy. In fact, they're going to be hard because we're Christians. Like what I just told you earlier, because I chose you out of the world will hate you. Once we decide to follow Christ and stop following the world's not going to like us anymore because we're not living that way anymore. And I've experienced this a lot since my husband and I really started walking with Jesus in January after we got married. We've noticed some things with relationships in our life have kind of changed. And, it kind of sucks. Obviously you had like a strong relationship with one person and now it's kind of dwindling because of your faith. Yeah, it's difficult, but it's to be expected. The Bible tells us about that. And also, as we go through these trials, it only makes us stronger in Christ. So I just want to encourage you, whatever you're going through, whether it's mental and emotional, or it's physical, or it's with relationships, just keep going. Keep going. Don't give up. We're so close to the finish line, guys. I have no idea when we're going to be out of here, but I do know it's going to be really soon. I hope this video was encouraging in some small way. Thank you so much